Everybody, welcome to the MVP Program's Winter Webinar Series. We're here for a deep dive into nature-based solutions. You're going to learn about the program's focus on nature-based solutions, and you're going to see some great examples from around the Commonwealth that might apply to your town. Our hosts for today are myself, Andrew Smith. My pronouns are he, his, and my co-host is...
Hi, everybody. I'm Carrie Ann. My pronouns are they, them. It's nice to be here with you all.
Thank you. And we're going to just dive right in to our presentation. So first things first, we're recording today. Everybody knows we're recording. If you have questions for your presentations that we're gonna go over today, make sure you include the questions in the chat box. Those will be moderated during our Q&A sessions. And this is the first of three, implementing nature-based solutions today. Next week, we have community engagement and environmental justice. And two weeks from now, we'll have building resilience through partnerships. If you are interested in those, sign up on Eventbrite at EEA's MVP program tab. And if you are somebody who's having a hard time logging in, or you know somebody who's having a hard time logging in, make sure you go to the Eventbrite page and use the call-in number or download the app. We've had a couple of people say they're having a hard time. So either download the app or use the call-in number, which is right there. So one of the things we want to highlight is why we're here, which is that in the fall, our team conducted outreach to MVP stakeholders in the form of a survey. We had approximately 200 responses. There was a bunch of follow-up discussions around those responses. And we identified 3 areas that people around the Commonwealth wanted to learn more about. Nature-based solutions over here, environmental justice and community engagement, and collaborations and partnerships. So that's what we're focusing on, those 3 topic areas. When we did a deeper dive into the data, it looked like this brown category is redesigns and retrofits, and a lot of the concerns with nature-based solutions and redesigns and retrofits, they overlapped with one another. So that's why we're making this our first presentation. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kara for some exciting updates on what's going on in the program right now.
Awesome, thank you, Andrew. So I'm Kara Runston, for anyone who hasn't met me before. I'm the MVP program manager, and I use she, her pronouns. So I just wanted to give a few quick updates on what's going on with MVP. You may have seen a lot of these if you receive our newsletter. And if you don't, you should sign up and get in touch with us about that. But the first big announcement is that we have a new and improved website. It's resilientma.org/MVP. And you can see the banner image here. So that's what to look for on the website. So this should be the first place that you go kind of for all things MVP going forward, and it will direct you out to the right places. So you can use all the links in there to get the right information. The homepage has information about our grants, links to new toolkits on topics of interest, one of which is nature-based solutions. And Hillary King, our Central Regional Coordinator, is going to talk about the toolkit in a little bit. And then there's also access to other types of information like our previous newsletters or press releases or webinars. And we'll post this webinar as soon as we can up there. It might take a week or 2 before it is live there. And another quick note on the new website is if you should refresh your page when you first get to it. You might still see the old page, and you just need to refresh it to see the new page. So next slide, Andrew. So the other big new thing is our expression of interest prior to the FY fiscal year 22 round of action grants, which is expected to open around the end of March, early April. So we heard loud and clear from the survey that we did last fall that you all were interested in this kind of opportunity. So we wanted to make it available. It basically systematizes what we've done before in terms of talking to applicants about potential projects prior to the request for responses being released. So it's just a short form that you can fill out some info about your project idea, and essentially that will set up a meeting with your regional coordinator, like a 30-minute meeting to talk about the project idea and some feedback on it. So right now it's just open to eligible municipalities, so MVP designated municipalities. And if you can fill out this form by February 26th, we will set up a time to talk to you about your project idea. And remember that after the RFR comes out, we can't talk about specific projects, so that's why it's helpful to have these conversations now. And again, info about all of these announcements are in the newsletter that came out yesterday morning. So look for that in your inbox. And if you didn't receive it or have any questions, just reach out to your regional coordinator or me. And
Great,
yeah,
thanks.
I'll hand it back.
Thanks. Awesome, thank you. So with that, we're going to go into our agenda for the day. We have a jam-packed day, lots of stuff to learn about. We have Hillary King, as Kara mentioned, from the Central Region, talking about the Nature-Based Solutions Toolkit. Betsy Gladfelter from Falmouth is going to talk about the Coonamessett River Restoration Project, which is really exciting. I've learned a lot about it the past few weeks. Kelly Phelan from Braintree is going to talk about the Monotaquat River Restoration Project. Christopher Curtis is going to talk about some non-structural nature-based solutions, such as legislation and site plan review and local town ordinances and policies. We're going to have a Q&A after each one of those, so keep your questions in the chat box so we can have some moderation after each of these presentations. Then we're going to have a panel discussion after everybody finishes their presentations, and then we're going to move into a participant networking session at the end, which is something that we have heard that people want to see more opportunities to do in their professional lives. So with that, here we go. We have Hillary King between now and 10:25, and she's going to address the Nature-Based Solutions Toolkit.
Thanks, Andrew. Let's see, let me pull up my notes here. My caffeine has just kicked in for the morning, and so I am going to try to stay slow and steady, but please give me a shout if I start talking really fast. Good morning, everybody. I'm glad you're here. So as Kara mentioned, the Nature-Based Solutions Toolkit is now up on our website, and it can be viewed either as a web page or downloaded as a PDF. It's a fairly big document. Digging into this topic over the last year has shown me how nature-based solutions includes an enormous umbrella of topics. So my goal for today is to provide a quick overview of the topic and let you know what you can find in our toolkit. Next page, please, Andrew. On screen here is the definition of nature-based solution we've provided in the toolkit. It's based on a definition developed by the Massachusetts Ecosystem Climate Adaptation Network, or MassECAN. We have a mainstreaming nature-based solutions technical expert group, and they've done a lot of great work to get people understanding what this topic is all about. So the toolkit, oh, you can go back. You can go back to that first page, Andrew. So the toolkit also provides a basic framework as to why nature-based solutions are being highlighted for community resilience. It discusses the importance of building a diverse team of partners surrounding the issue at hand and spotlights a regional watershed partnership that's successfully making changes. It provides a few examples of ways we can protect and restore nature in our communities and better manage ecosystems in our working and developed landscapes. Before I hop into more about the toolkit, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge the term climate resilience. We hear the term a lot around here, and I feel like it can get lost as jargon. The MVP program asks communities to talk about how they can work together to address their vulnerabilities to our changing climate, to not just be able to recover, but continuously build capacity to reduce the impacts of these future climate events. So what nature-based solutions has to do with this is nature is resilient. Earth's plants and animals have adapted to challenges delivered by natural hazards for millennia before the rise of our cities. And in a more recent history, human development generally has tried to control and block out nature, and we've exacerbated these challenges. So the idea behind nature-based solutions is that we should harness and lean into what already works naturally that we need to look at our existing human systems holistically to better approach the way we plan, design, develop, and interact with our environment. So with that, the next slide, please. On the left of this slide is our toolkit content. In basic terms, this is shown on the website. And as I mentioned during the previous slide, you can learn more about how nature-based solutions can help communities prepare for and respond to the unprecedented challenges of our changing climate. You can get ideas of how to build support for a project. In some ways, you might start to think about how community vulnerabilities might be helped by nature-based solutions. So in its first section, the toolkit provides examples and benefits of, I'll call it NBS for the sake of time, such as promoting public health, clean water, healthy food systems, and storing carbon from the atmosphere. It has examples of NBS strategies and installations and how they might provide various environmental, social, or cultural and economic benefits to our communities. There's more information on how healthy ecosystems provide direct and indirect benefits to our communities. These things include food and renewable non-food products, air and water cleansing, waste decomposition and treatment, hazard mitigation, and so much more. We often call them ecosystem services or natural resources, or as I'm learning from writings by Professor Robin Wall-Kimmerer of the Potawatomi Nation, they're simply gifts of the earth. Lastly, this section provides lots of other resources from groups and professionals that have already put together great information on the topic. Next slide. The second section provides a list of potential partners that might be integral to assisting your community with identifying nature-based solutions to address local vulnerabilities. These partnerships can help us connect with our natural systems and understand the needs of the people in our communities to tailor long-term, cost-effective strategies to enhance our public health, safety, and welfare. The Resilient Taunton Watershed Network is highlighted, also known as Our Town. This is a collaborative group of local, nonprofit, state, regional, and federal agencies and organizations that meets bi-monthly to promote resiliency in the watershed. Next slide. The craft section of the toolkit provides project ideas and resources for you to think about ways to protect, restore, and manage the ecological health in your own community. It talks about investigating the root cause of an issue of concern to explore solutions that could reverse or mitigate the cause rather than temporarily treating the symptoms. Then this goes on to provide outside case study resources and brief case studies from MVP action grant projects, which I'll go into a little bit now. Next slide, please. So the basic structure of the case studies talks about, it's based on the definition provided at the beginning of the slide here: protect, restore, and manage. So nature-based solution protection strategies often include non-structural work, like reviewing ordinances and bylaws to develop conservation, natural resource, or flood overlay districts. And often planning and regulatory projects will help lay the groundwork to support future NBS implementation. The toolkit highlights opportunities for communities who have not yet applied for planning grant funding to expand the grant process for nature-based solutions. It lists some other non-structural nature-based solution opportunities, including the Deerfield project that will be highlighted later in the webinar. And again, links and tools and resources on this topic. Next slide. More tangible nature-based solution protection strategies include conservation easements and land acquisitions. Case study number 3 is an overview of Mattapoisett's Pine Island Pond Watershed Lands Project. in which a partnership resulted in the purchase of 120 acres of land to safeguard an important water system and surrounding habitat into the future by preventing additional development from occurring within this area vulnerable to coastal storm flooding. And again, links to other conservation resources and programs. This section provides examples of how we might restore disrupted and degraded ecosystems with nature-based solutions, again, with multiple co-benefits. The photos here are from Falmouth's fiscal year 19 action grant, which will be discussed momentarily as well. And links. You might be sensing a trend here. And then my last section, next slide, looks to the history of human land and resource management in our various communities and sectors of the economy. NBS management approaches will incorporate elements of ecosystems or mimic natural processes in areas from urban centers to agricultural and forest landscapes. There's information in this section on how Brookline is developing a research and data-based actionable urban forest climate resiliency master plan, and provides more ways to manage with nature-based solutions, for example, encouraging sustainable agricultural and forestry practices, tree planting programs, and incentivizing personal land stewardship, enabling our homes, economy, and built landscapes to foster healthy air, water, and food systems. And finally, next slide. As with all of our toolkits, we hope you'll reach out to your regional coordinator with questions, and I'm happy to help answer questions about nature-based solutions for any community in the Commonwealth. As time allows, I'd love to meet you all and learn your challenges and talk about this topic. So I thank you so much for being here today, and I think there's time to open it up for questions.
Awesome, excellent work, Hillary. That was really well timed. That was perfect. So with that, I'm going to bounce it over to Carrie Ann. She's going to be our moderator for our questions.
Thank you, Hillary. That was excellent. And you've done such an incredible job explaining how the toolkit works that it doesn't seem like in this moment that there's any follow-up questions. So unless something comes in, it seems like the chat, everybody, they just wanted to know where the link was. And so
Yeah,
we dropped the link
into,
yep, it's in there. So folks can go and explore it. And like Hillary said, if anybody has any questions to follow up.
Great, thank you.
All right, so with that, we're going to go over to Falmouth's Coonamessett Restoration Project. So, so we're gonna have Betsy Gladfelter. I gotta get the bio 1 second. Sorry. All right, so Betsy Gladfelter. Her pronouns are she, her, hers. She is a Falmouth Conservation Commissioner and a guest investigator at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. For the past, I can't see it. I'm so sorry. There we go. All right, for the past 11 years, she's been the town's project coordinator for the Coonamessett River Restoration Project and the Coonamessett River Greenway Heritage Trail. She has an A.B. in Biological Sciences from Stanford University and a PhD in Biology from UCLA, and has spent her career in coastal research, education, and administration. More than 25 years in the Virgin Islands and the past 23 years on Cape Cod. From an interest in land use history development through traveling around much of the world by foot, by bicycle, or sail, and a background in coral reef / coastal science, she has especially enjoyed working with others in southeastern Massachusetts on restoration projects, including retired cranberry bogs. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Betsy.
Okay, I just unmuted myself. Thanks, Andrew. So our project on the Coonamessett River is a nature-based solution to increase resiliency to climate change. It was a shovel-ready project when we applied for MVP funds, and MVP enabled us to get to the finish line. Next. Falmouth is located in the southwest corner of Cape Cod. The project for years, that river for years has been recognized by national, state, and local biologists as an important diadromous fish stream. It had a herring run of over 1 million in the early 1900s, and that has been reduced to 50,000 plus or minus 20,000 for the past 15 years that we've had counting. The river's located on a glacial outwash plain, which means it has a very shallow gradient, and it's primarily groundwater fed. Next. So the goals were to establish a healthy, self-sustaining river and wetland ecosystem, to increase coastal resiliency by removing blockages and creating connectivity of floodplain, and to increase recreational and educational opportunities for people of all ages and all abilities. Next. So how did prior land uses impact river and wetland functions? Well, from a wild river, in 1700, the first mill in Falmouth was established on the Coonamessett. And for 200 years, there were mills along the entire 3-mile length of the river. In the late 1800s, all of the wetlands to either side of the river were converted to cranberry bogs, and that's the picture on the map on the right. Next. Because there is this rich history, in addition to doing the restoration project, this gave us the opportunity to link all the trail systems along the river, and you can see that on the right, and establish a Coonamessett Greenway Heritage Trail. The entire area is a greenway. I'll explain how that came to be in a minute. But there are 12 sets of interpretive panels with information about the history, the ecology, geology, hydrology, and restoration. Next. So one of the things Andrew asked was lessons learned. Well, I quickly, 2 lessons learned that I tell anybody else who follows us. One is things take twice as long as you think they will, and they cost twice as much. I like to think of projects like a friend of mine said, when you plant something in the soil in Cape Cod, the first year it sleeps, the second year it creeps, the third year it leaps. Well, this project slept for at least 20 years, even though it was recognized as an important, one of the most important herring runs on the Cape. But there are 2 groups, the Coonamessett River Trust, which began doing monitoring on the river of biological, ecological, and chemical characteristics in the early 2000s, and the 300 Committee, who there were some conservation lands along the corridor, but they worked with the town to make an entire corridor a greenway of conservation lands. The creeping phase began with, we were listed as a priority river with Massachusetts Division of Ecological Restoration, and that was key to the success of this project. They helped us all along the way with advice and technical assistance. But the next part of the creeping phase, and what I think is really important to understand, is there are small grants that can help you move a project along. And we were lucky to get them every 2 years. Next. This enabled us to apply for some federal funding, and we got a NOAA restoration funding grant in 2016, which seemed like a lot of money at the time, but it certainly got us started, and we got construction started. And in addition, we had another source of funds for the Coonamessett Greenway Heritage Trail on the bottom. So total, there were 17 grants plus donations, 4 million for the restoration and another $1 million for the development of the trail. Next. This is just to show you what a cranberry bog looks like when you put 100 years of sand on it. The one to the right is the lower part of the core. You show the peat interface, and the one on the left, you see the little cranberry plant growing in the top. Next. So one of the goals was to improve river habitat. The river, when it was farmed, became straight, broad, and shallow with a sandy bottom. Restoration created a longer channel with many microhabitats and slower flowing areas with abundant woody debris. Next. Two aspects of the area favored a nature-based solution to increase resiliency. One is that 70% of the flow in the Coonamessett comes from cold water springs. So if you restored connectivity along the floodplain, you would continue to have a cold water river, even as climate gets warmer. And also we have this greenway of protected conservation lands all along the river. Next. Next. Andrew? Okay, so
my internet connection cut out for a second and I panicked, so, but it's okay.
Well, I panicked too. So the sort of the bottom line of restoration is to remove stressors. And so in the yellow, you see phase 1, which was completed in 2018, and phase 2, which the MVP funds helped, is outlined in red. The goal was to remove blockages to the river. So there were a berm, middle berm, and John Parker Road culvert, which you see in the middle. It's kind of an ugly structure. And then to restore the wetlands, to restore the river channel and the wetlands to either side. Next. I guess there's some technical difficulty.
Yeah. Andrew, are you able to unmute yourself? Are you? Okay.
If you allow me to screen share, I can put this up.
Yeah, we can do that. One moment. Sorry, everybody. We'll make you a co-host, Betsy. Yes. Okay. Did you get the invite there?
Where should it be? Oh, share?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now I have to remember how to do this.
There we go.
Oops. Wait a second.
I just put that back up there. So I was bounced out and then I was bounced back in again. So do you want me to continue sharing or not?
Well, you continue because I haven't gotten mine up yet.
Okay, great. So is this the right slide? I'm so sorry for that. It just completely became a problem.
Andrew, we're not seeing anything.
I'm so sorry. All right, so start the video, and I'm so sorry I disappeared, and now I'm back.
No worries. We all have internet problems these days, so thanks for bearing with us, everybody.
Thank you so much, and I'm sorry that happened. Tell me when that's working.
Well, it's working.
Great.
Nope, you've gone beyond. Can you go back one? Okay.
That one?
No. Go with the guys in the mud.
That one.
Okay, so when you start a restoration project like this, it's important to sort of prepare the neighbors, because it really looks ugly at first, but it's amazing how quickly it bounces back. And you need to do this in order to make the structural changes to the river channel. Next. So in addition to building a river channel, the wetlands to either side are made to a pit and mound topography, so that you have sun and shade plants, where you have plants who like their feet wet all the time and plants who like to be drier. But just to show you, the pictures on the left were taken in 1911 by Lewis Hine, who was studying child labor. That's Middleburn in 1911. In May 22nd, 2020, Middleburn lies right to the right of, well, it's gone now, but right to the right of this boardwalk, and construction had just finished. 6 weeks later, that wetland meadow had bounced back from seeds that were in that peat that were buried for 200 years underwater, and then 100 years under sand. Next. Just a couple of quick before and after. This is what Middle Bog looked like in February 2020. Next. And this is the slide you see. This is what it looked like in September 2020. Next. And the three areas, the top shows restoration of the wetland surface. The middle shows the new bridge at John Parker Road that has a sidewalk on it now. And the bottom shows this culvert removed. Well, the whole middle dam was removed, and it was replaced with Swift's crossing. And Swift were the brothers who first put the cranberry bogs on the Coonamessett. Next. Just another aerial. You get a feeling of the fact that this whole river system has been made intact. The whole floodplain is connected. This is important because it allows the whole floodplain to absorb coastal storm flowage. The diverse natural plant community can bounce back from storm impacts. And thirdly, this is right near the estuary, and with expected sea level rise and barriers removed, the Coonamessett provides an opportunity for salt marsh to migrate inland as sea level rises. Next. So for us, it was really important. These areas were frequented by dog walkers and walkers in the past, a limited number, but here was an opportunity to bring people out into nature. And so there are a number of school groups from elementary to postgraduate. Research is done there. Groups, the bottom right picture is another a visit from another group that was doing a restoration, actually the Tidmarsh group. And then the middle picture shows a Coonamessett River Trust project, which was tagging herring. Next. So the way that this can be used, we've entertained more than 400 elementary students a year on field trips. I work with a second grade. I go in and talk with them. The art teacher comes in. They do a project. In this case, they painted herring. They go on a field trip. They can adopt the herring. That's part of the project. And so that they can check in on the computer and see how far their herring has gone, or whether, I always tell them mine disappears into the mouth of another fish. Next. And here are a couple of the interpretive signs and people looking at them. And the bottom shows an AmeriCorps group who helped us put some of them in. And to the right shows town conservation and DPW, who also helped. They were great helps, and a volunteer from the town. Next. It's really one of the important aspects of developing an area like this, and it's been incredibly important during COVID, is providing opportunities for people to get into nature. Next. So what are the climate adaptations of the Coonamessett River project? One, we ended up with a naturalized self-sustaining wetland. So it acts as a sponge, absorbs floodwaters, a kidney, it takes out nitrogen and other pollutants, and can store carbon. It increases biodiversity and resiliency. Floodplain connectivity allows unrestricted 3D water movement, flood storage, and salt marsh migration. And we have improved fisheries. And all of these things, increased biodiversity, improved fisheries, moderating temperatures have already been seen. One of our goals was to provide opportunities for brook trout to live in the lower river. They've been naturalized brook trout have been restored to the Coonamessett River, and the goal is to restore a salter trout population. This was Falmouth was a major salter trout destination in the early 1900s. Next. We had over 40 partners, and who you can see on the slide here. What I like to say is it looks impressive to see all these symbols, but all these symbols have people behind them, and the people behind them were passionate to get this project done. The bottom two pictures are taken at the beginning and the end of the project. The one to the left shows people from the town of Falmouth, state representatives, select board, town manager, conservation, DPW, and the one on the left shows was taken the last day of construction, and it shows everyone involved in the actual construction of the project. Next. Well, actually not everyone. The agency people couldn't come because of COVID, but everybody else there. And lastly, this is one of the second grade groups, and from my perspective, one of the most important aspects of the project is to develop a sense of stewardship of the natural system. And it's been great working with the little kids. Next. That's it.
So with that, I think we're going to do some Q&As. Carrie Ann is ready and willing to provide the moderation for our Q&A section for this. And Carolyn, how are we doing on time? So it's 10:40 right now. So yeah, we've got some time. This is great.
Great. Betsy, thank you so much. This project is so wonderful to learn about, and you've done such a fabulous job. And I love looking at this picture of the second graders in their mud boots, ready to get dirty. So thinking, at the end of your presentation, you were talking about the people involved. And at one point you talk about letting the neighbors know in terms of it being a bit ugly. And I'm wondering if you could talk a bit, one of the questions is about if there was any resistance from surrounding communities, and how did you get people invested in the project?
So that's an excellent question. And when I talked about the sleeping phase, that was actually a period of the bog versus river wars. There was a lot of opposition to the project because it was town-owned land, but it was leased for cranberries, and cranberries are historic on the Cape. And so there was actually a town committee that worked for 10 years called the Coonamessett River Working Group to try to resolve this. And it started with Lower Bog being retired. And so that was our first goal, and that's how the project started. That's how we started with phase one. But in fact, by the time we broke ground for phase one, we had moved on, and we were doing the planning phase for phase two. And the amazing thing is, last year, the town annual report featured this project, pictures on the front and the back, and front and back of the front and back cover. And so it took a lot of took a lot of public meetings and working with people individually. But yes, there was opposition.
Great, thank you. There is another question here about if you all considered alternative restoration techniques, other nature-based solutions, and what were the considerations that you all were holding when choosing this pathway, thinking about erosion or other biological considerations?
Well, in this case, I mean, the pathway we chose was to restore this to a naturalized river and wetland system. But we did one of those, well, actually the first grant we got, the Fish America NOAA grant back in 2011, looked at alternatives to allow fish passage while not removing the barriers. And while that would have allowed easier fish passage, the actual habitat for the fish would still be degraded. And so we did look at alternatives.
Great. There are a number of questions asking about monitoring and monitoring plans, carbon sequestration. So could you talk a little bit about what the monitoring moving forward of the project looks like?
Okay, well, so two parts to that. One is the Coonamessett River Trust is mainly scientists from various institutions in Woods Hole, and they designed and are implementing a monitoring system. What was the second part of your question?
Some folks are asking about carbon sequestration,
Okay.
Specific types of monitoring.
Okay, so there's a report that just came out, and you can find it on the Living Observatory website. Look at livingobservatory.org, and it's specifically looks at the various ways that that restoring cranberry bogs to naturalized wetlands makes the system more resilient. And there's a chapter on each of them. It's a report that was just completed. It includes, that's it. It includes Tidmarsh and Eel River in Plymouth and the Coonamessett River, and then foothills also in Plymouth. And so there are scientists that are working on all of these. Some of the work some of the projects are being done in Falmouth. Most of the projects that would tell you about carbon sequestration and changes in soil bacteria are being done on the Tidmarsh.
Excellent. So there are so many comments in addition to questions in the chat just about how beautiful this project is, and how so many people now want to go and take a walk there and are interested in learning more, and are interested in potentially talking with you more about this project. What is the best way for people to learn more and connect with you if they have specific or more questions?
So I'll give you my email, but I'm always welcome if people have a group who would like a tour. I'm always willing to give. I love to walk out at the river, and I'm there several times a week. So if people want to email me, then I guess you can put this up, but it's whoi.edu.
Great, thank you. We can definitely put that in the chat. Carolyn, how are we doing on time right now?
We are at time for the next presentation, so I think the rest of the questions can either follow up with us or Betsy afterwards, or save some for the panel at the end as well.
Thank you so much. And Betsy, thank you so much for sharing all of the decades of work that you all have been doing in this project.
This This is exactly what we're looking for. Great examples. So thank you for sharing it with us. So our next project is in a different stage. It's probably in the creeping or leaping phase of the development of a restoration project. And we have Kelly Phelan. She's a conservation planner from Braintree Planning and Community Development Department. She is staff for the Conservation Commission and coordinates many town initiatives, including open space and recreation planning and the community rating system, CRS for folks who are familiar with flooding. Kelly is representing Braintree in the climate task force of the Metro Mayors Coalition and manages the town's resilience projects, including a public-private dam removal project, as well as a salt marsh restoration and shoreline stabilization project. Kelly has a BA from UMass Amherst and a master's degree in resource management and administration from Antioch University, New England. With that, I'm going to highlight Kelly, and away we go.
Am I on?
You're
So you'll advance the slides?
Correct, yes.
Yep, okay. So good morning, everyone. This is the Manatequit River Restoration Project in Braintree, similar to Betsy's project, but in a much different environment, much more urban environment. The project includes removal of 2 dams, restoration of the river channel through what is now a pond, construction of a public access trail, and construction of a bridge by the property owner, as well as fish passage improvements. Next slide. The Manatequit River is part of the 4 River watershed. The Farm and Cacheto rivers come together near the center of Braintree to form the Manatequit, which flows for about 5 miles through town into the tidal 4 River. Next slide. The project locus is a 30-acre privately owned site. It's home of the former Armstrong World Industries Company, which is a large manufacturer of flooring materials until they closed in 1995. The Armstrong Dam is located under that remaining building that you can see there. It impounds the river to create Hollingsworth Pond, so we're looking upstream here. Then Ames Pond Dam is another relic industrial dam located downstream. Most of the factory buildings have been demolished, as you can see in this photo, it's a recent drone photo from just about a year ago. Next slide, please. This gives you a better look at the Armstrong Dam, and the building on top of it is going to come down in the next few months so that the dam removal can proceed. Next slide. This is the relic Ames Pond Dam. So it was a much smaller dam. Many of the boards were removed many years ago, so it's not holding back much water at this point, but it's still an obstruction in the river. Next slide. So when the Armstrong Dam is removed, a naturalized channel will be created in what is now Hollingsworth Pond. The bends of the river will be stabilized with a joint planted boulder revetment. So willow, dogwood, and alder stakes will be planted in the joints to help naturalize that area, but we do need some extra reinforcement in those high energy areas. The rest of the former impoundment will be planted with native trees and shrubs and seeded with a wet meadow mix, and it will become part of the floodplain. Next slide, please. There are many benefits to the project. Removal of the dams will allow migratory fish such as river herring to access upstream spawning habitat. There's some herring here in the lower part of the photo that maybe you can make out from our very own herring from the Manatequit River. So the river herring are prey fish for larger species. They help support New England commercial and recreational fisheries. So the benefits of the project go far beyond the Manatequit to the whole New England fisheries system. Their spawning habitat is a 180-acre reservoir located upstream. It's the drinking water supply for 3 towns, so there's definitely some challenges with water supply and management in the watershed. Next slide. The project will improve conditions for all kinds of wildlife in addition to fish by allowing them to move freely up and down the river corridor. The project will improve water quality because the water won't be held back by the dam. It will be cooler and hold more dissolved oxygen, which is critical to all forms of aquatic life. Next slide, please. The project will increase resilience to climate change. Our region is experiencing increased frequency of heavy precipitation events. Removal of the dams eliminates potential for a catastrophic dam failure in the event of a severe storm. Next slide. And the public access trail, which is pretty exciting to many of us, the trail will be located along the restored river channel through the entire site, and the rest of the site will be redeveloped by the property owner at some point in the future. The owner is providing an easement to the town for the trail, and this will provide a new recreation opportunity within an environmental justice area. And it's worth noting that there's very little access to the river in Braintree. As you know, as an older, more developed town, the areas along the river were developed pretty heavily, and there's not many places in town where there's access that's feasible. So this is very exciting to many residents and many of us in the town. Next slide. Project is located within and adjacent to one of the largest temperature hotspots in Braintree. This was identified in our climate vulnerability assessment and action plan. As a former industrial mill complex, the site is almost entirely paved and impervious. Surface temperature is significantly hotter than in surrounding areas that have more tree canopy and less paved area.